doubled. And if I don't support it, I don't have to pay my taxes. So we'll just do it that way. Whoever agrees with it gets to pay double taxes, and those who disagree with it don't have to pay any.
You're saying if you're for immigration, you pay double taxes?
That's right.
Yeah.
And see that way it'll settle it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't have to pay for it, and you can pay that. You can foot the bill that you want.
that's actually an interesting point that you bring up because did you listen to the Rich Dad Poor
Oh
Dad
yeah,
section this week?
we going?
Yeah,
Okay.
we started. And the reason why I say that's an interesting point is you probably heard at one point where he was talking about a lot of the reason that the poor and middle class pay a lot of taxes is because they tried to tax rich people.
And isn't it? I found that funny because I I use the app and I use the company,
hmm
but the company Robinhood.
Oh yeah, yeah. The trading, yeah. That's
That
another
is,
funny
I
thing.
thought about that the other day, and I thought, as bad as I disagree with that mentality, it's awfully ironic that I use one named that.
hmm
Uh, now, and the whole, and there's people that'll look at you cross-eyed because, of course, he's a hero in that story. Uh, and it was an eye opener to me, even as a young adult, when I realized that Robin Hood was actually the bad guy.
Yeah.
Not that King Richard was a good guy,
hmm
but Robin Hood was definitely a bad guy.
Yeah.
He's Robin Hood was a bleeding heart liberal who thought he could come take your money and give to other people who, well, at that time they may have really had it hard. However, to these people who didn't earn the money, I'm gonna take it from you and give it to them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it sort of depends. If it's a tyrant king that's very unjust, then I would say maybe you can call him a slight hero or anti-hero or something. But if it's just a regular political system, a regular king that's trying to be just and trying to be fair, then yeah, I would say he's a criminal.
Now,
Um,
the Robin Hood today, to me, would be a guy who successfully got a bill through Congress that stopped taxes.
yeah,
Period.
yeah,
That would be the Robin Hood. That's taken back from the rich, which is the
yeah,
government, and given to the poor, which is the taxpayers who it was taken from.
yeah. That's what Rich Dad Poor Dad does a really good job of teaching this. He calls it the Robin Hood theory of economics, I think is what he called it. But
Sure.
he does a good job explaining in a simple way why advocating for more taxes on anybody typically comes back and hits you. Uh, there because people have been trying to do that to rich people for thousands of years, so they see it coming way in advance, and
And
they
Kevin, this is a type of mentality that I try to get people to understand is that let's say today, people, especially in the last several years, the concept of wealth redistribution has been a hot topic. And this is what I like to say is that let's say that we get that let today everybody's money was pooled together and you gave it back to everybody equally. Everybody had down to the penny, had the equal amount of money. All right. In 6 months to a year, the money would be redistributed back the way it is right now because there's going to be consumers and there's going to be people who create uh, uh, those objects to be consumed, right? And the billionaires in about 6 months to a year would be billionaires again. And the people who were poor would be poor again because they're doing nothing but spending. Am I right about that?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, you could redistribute it today, and in 6 months to a year, it'd be right back like it was.
yeah. The only way to um I'm I'm having to remember the camera switch. It took me a minute to switch them. But yeah, again, it's like he says in Rich Dad Poor Dad. If people would know to allocate some of that money into assets as opposed to the newest car, the newest house, pick the toy, whatever. Um, it's that concept he talks about of putting money into assets and then let your assets cover some of the luxuries and the toys that you want later on after some of that income has come in.
It's like that old adage, if you fail to have a plan, you plan to fail. You
Mhm.
know, if now I do understand that there may be some people out there who have the correct mentality and they just need a little money to implement a plan. I get that. However, if you just it's the same mentality with those who win the lottery, right? You hear about people who win the lottery and they're basically set for life. If they manage that money right, they're set for life.
Mhm.
But in a few years, they're broke again. How does that happen?
Yep.
They didn't have a plan for it. They just blew their money, blew right through it, and thought that it was going to last forever. And you can't have a funnel that pulls it out and expect the top to be unlimited forever. You know,
Yeah, and even if you don't know how to, manage it yourself, all they would have to do now granted, you're gonna spend some money, but you could just go, to Wall Street or to JP Morgan or somebody like that and say, "Hey, I need help managing this," and, you give them. I mean, up front, it may be a little costly. They might demand, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000. But once you cut a deal with them, now you're effectively, you're letting, even if you're letting them build your assets as opposed to you doing it yourself, somebody's doing it.
right?
Um, and most of those guys are, you know, are pretty good at what they do. Now,
This is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I know that I know we hit on this a little bit in some other episodes, but I'm still having trouble, I guess, reconciling a little bit, and it's my way of thinking. I get that. I get that, because I find myself, even while listening to this book, I find myself, my mind is wanting to go back to the way I've always come up and always been raised and things, and I
mhm,
have to go, no, no, no. He said that's the wrong way to think. But I keep finding myself, you know, he comes down a lot more favorable on higher risk things that I'm comfortable with.
yeah,
And, I kinda feel like I get what he's saying, that if you, kinda like the no risk, no reward thing.
mhm,
However, I think that maybe somewhat he is failing to understand that, or maybe he's had money for so long now that he doesn't understand the people who don't have money, what a greater risk it is for me in losing it than it is him. I mean, what do you feel about that?
yeah, that's one of the sort of more difficult mindsets to get out of, if not the most difficult one to get out of. I feel like he's mostly right, even though like you said, I know it doesn't feel right. But and I mean, you're not wrong. It does damage you, or it feels very damaging if you take a lot of risk as just somebody on an average income and it all blows up. Then yeah, it's gonna hurt. You're gonna
Like,
be back to zero.
for instance, and I'm not asking you to state on here what it is unless you're comfortable, but do you remember the biggest risk you've taken?
Oh yeah,
And how it was probably a gut-wrenching thing that you may have lost sleep over because you're saying, "I think this is gonna be a good idea, but oh my gosh, what if it's not?"
yeah.
You know?
Nah, I'm trying to think of exactly what it was. During COVID, I took one of the biggest risks that I'd ever taken, and I bought something that really I, I wouldn't ever advocate somebody buying these things. I mean, you can make money, but I was sort of acting like a day trader, and I bought, I think it was a triple leveraged S&P 500 bear fund, which means that I was betting on the market going down. Um, and
So it's
initially,
kinda like you were shorting something almost.
so, sort of, but not. I don't know. I forget exactly how they what they put into that ETF to make it mirror the a drop in the. Let's just say I believed that the market was going to drop. And initially I made such a big bet that within a day or two I made like $30,000.
Oh, wow.
Um, but my timing was bad. Either I guess when I held on to it a little bit too long, um, and the market recovered and it stung me pretty bad and I took a pretty big loss. But to me, it was I guess, necessary for that to happen to show you that, yeah, risk taking on some risk is good, but taking too much is dumb. And sometimes you have to get burned a little bit
Sure.
to know what the difference is between smart and dumb, I guess.
Sure.
But and that
Well,
was
initially, I guess initially your original thoughts were good, but your mindset, and I'm not calling you a greedy person, but
yeah.
your mindset thought, "Hey, what if I leave this in here longer?"
hmm
And that's what stung you,
No,
right? I mean,
greed is what got me. That's I'm not a greedy person, but in that instance, greed is what caused me to get hurt. You know.
sure,
So yeah, a lot of people, a lot of capitalists, especially if they don't subscribe to God or believe in, that Jesus came and died, they think that greed is
Gordon Gekko,
yeah, well,
greed's good.
yeah, they think that greed is their mantra.
Sure,
But again, that's why it's so important to have God, because you don't have to be greedy to make money. As a matter of fact, the more ethical that you are, the more likely you are to be, you know, the Solomon, the Proverbs type of
sure.
good steward that,
And
you know.
I know, and we've hit on this before, but I guess I'm still looking for in the book. Now I'm enjoying the book. I'm enjoying the story. I'm enjoying, his kind of journey into thinking, I guess, the wealthy way,
Mhm.
to, but I'm still kind of, my brain is still saying, this is all well and good. I understand what you're saying, and I think it's good. However, I'm still looking for the moment where I go, oh, that's how you do it.
Mhm.
And I kind of feel like he's giving you the skills to think right, but I still kind of think like you have to come up on your own the way to build assets. And I think it takes a creative mind to do that, and some people just don't really. I'm not really a creative person. I'm really not, and I'm kind of torn about how you actually do this.
Well, if
Or actually looking for those opportunities and realizing that hey, this is an opportunity right here.
yeah. Um, before I go down this path, are you uncomfortable with me mentioning like what you did somewhat recently
No,
when it comes to
no, it's fine.
because to me that's a good example. Or can you tell them what you did not too long ago in terms of
Of the
a
business,
type of
yeah,
business?
yeah. I
hmm
had a tea business. It was a Herbalife business, and uh, I did that for about 5 years. Um, buying product, boost it up a little bit, sell it. Uh, and I was in a small town. Uh, had a little bit of a drive to get there because of the way uh, the market was as far as spreading out the businesses so you don't encroach on somebody else's.
hmm
Um, there was another business, and it's basically caffeine based. It's a caffeine based jolt of energy. So any time of the day, that's what we're selling. And
Oh, hey,
uh,
real quick before I forget, if you like the channel, subscribe, give us a like on YouTube, or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you prefer. Wanted to get that in there before we got too deep and I
amen.
forget.
Now,
But
and
go
several years later, another caffeine-based business opened up in the small town that I was in, and it basically overnight, you're gonna have a shift when anytime there's a new thing. It's kinda halved my business. Um, I was getting by okay to begin with, but now it was just not feasible, so I had to shut it down.
is it that
Um,
um was it just not enough demand, or was it other businesses nearby
yeah, I mean, this other business that opened up was, you know,
right next to you?
1,500 feet from me. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the way that it is, and especially in a small town, there's only so much cushion that you have,
hmm
doing that, and you know, honestly, at the end of the day, I still kind of felt, and I'm beginning to realize some of this, even though I really kind of had my own franchise in this. I was basically an employee of Herbalife, and
Mhm.
and that and I'm beginning to realize that, people have this mindset, kinda pie in the sky thing, "Oh, this is my own business." When basically all I was a salesman for the company. I had my own location,
Mhm.
but I'm buying the product from them, and they're perfectly happy to sell it to me, and I'm just a reseller.
Mhm.
That's all I'm doing, and you have to factor in things like any other retail business does. What's my overhead? How much am I really making off of each drink that I sell? And you're looking at many, many, many transactions so you can get by. And it's kind of they kind of have you over a barrel with that. I mean, and that's the nature of the business. I get that. But I was really an employee of them.
What, like, in the environment that sales are going well, like you said they were initially, what was, like, the average profit margin per drink?
Um,
On, like,
I
loaded
was
teas.
selling. It was costing me probably $3.50 a drink, and I'm selling them from for anywhere between 8 and 10.
Okay.
But that's not factoring in rent I was paying.
And over, yeah,
That's
all the
not
overhead
factoring
stuff.
in, gas bill I had to have in the winter. That's not factoring in electricity, things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and that whittles down, a little bit more. Plus, you're having to rebuy that product and, it's, and all those things have to be considered when you're starting a business. And I'm as guilty as anyone else of going, well, this is how much it cost me to buy the product, and this is how much I can sell it for. There's my profit.
Mhm.
And that's not really the case. You have to factor in You gotta factor in gas it takes to get to the facility and back. I mean, you have to factor in everything.
Yeah.
Food you're going to buy during that day to eat. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to factor in everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where a lot of people, uh, that's why a lot of people can never get past the middle class or whatever stage they're at is because, what you just said right there, at some point, you have to learn to you either start keeping track of all your expenses down to every bite that you eat, every mile that you drive, or you stay where you are. Unless you get
'Cause you're
occasionally.
really being dishonest with yourself if you don't do that.
Yeah.
You're setting yourself A lot of people, especially if margins are tight, you're setting yourself up for failure. Some people actually start a business and don't realize that they're already at a loss, and they don't and, they're already upside down, they don't even realize it.
Yeah, Walmart, for instance, I like talking about Walmart because when I dug into their financials, since they're a public company, I can access all of these things. I wanna say Walmart typically operates from, like, a 3 to 6% profit margin, so,
That and
uh
you think and look,
and
they're
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 doing
making
that with
billions, of course,
billions.
they're making
Yeah.
billions, but they have billions of transactions as
Yeah,
well.
I was gonna say, actually, being a giant business and managing a profit margin that small is actually far
I
more
mean, you think
difficult.
about that, that is so tiny.
Yeah, it's far more difficult, believe it or not. Everybody thinks bigger companies have it really easy, but like I said, believe it or not, um, at a company their size running on such a small profit margin is much more difficult than a small company doing it because, like you said, not only, yeah, they have more income and billions of dollars that they're dealing with, but they also have thousands of employees. They have trucks that have to be refueled, tires need to be replaced, trucks need to be replaced.
And basically, what people don't understand about the retail game too is that it sometimes these things hit me like epiphanies, when I'm listening to this book, people like Apple, they're their own company and they're the aren't they right now the richest company in America, maybe the world?
Definitely
Or
top
what
5. I think NVIDIA might be the top, but Apple's always, like, right up there.
But what I'm
Apple and
saying is
Microsoft.
they even though and don't get me wrong, I'm not feeling sorry for Apple. They're tremendously successful. However, when you think about it, they're an investment company.
Mhm.
They invest in this product, and they're gambling that they can sell it for more than they're making it,
Yeah.
for more than it cost them, and trust me, their margins are much better than Walmart and these other companies because I know, and because I've seen the figures of what it costs them to build the average iPhone, and I know what they sell it for. They're basically in the game of buying low and selling high. I mean, am
Mhm.
I right there?
Yeah, well, yeah, now they are. That see, the part another reason why people have so much trouble becoming wealthy or learning how to invest, starting a company is because a lot of the time how you start is or what you need to do when you start is different than what you need to do after you become a mature company. As a matter of fact, part of my problem as an investor is I sort of learned things backwards. Like I learned everything about the stock market, and now I'm learning about setting up an individual business, and really it should be the other way around. So it's sort of like I found the light at the end of the tunnel before I knew where the tunnel was.
Sure.
um,
And do you find that, I mean, just like Kiyosaki, I know that he probably had the same problem that Steve Jobs did, some of your other bigger CEOs. The problem is you get people on your boards and on your advisement committees and all these other kind of things that are much more conservative than you are, and they are uncomfortable with the risk that the people at the higher at the top are willing to take. And that's where they run into the friction is this guy wants to take risk and the other guys are trying to rein them back like they're on a horse saying, whoa, 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 you're going too fast. And I mean, it seems like that's the story of every company. Is that, do you find that to be the case?
um,
Everybody at the top wants to take the bigger risk, and the board or whoever is like, no, 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 no. That's too big a risk.
yeah, sometimes that is the case. Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot of the time that that is the case is because typically the founder of one of these big companies, the only reason that they own most of that big company or founded that big company is because they were willing to take some
Sure.
gigantic risk. But
I see both sides of the coin. I see that.
mhm,
However, a lot of times I want to look at the board members and say, hey, look, I know you're doing what you think is the best, but look where this guy is.
yeah,
I know that I know it's a big risk, but he's taken a bunch of big risks and look at where he is, you
yeah.
know?
Well, also part of the problem is, and I'm guilty of this too. Once you start, I mean, I can't really say I'm guilty of it because I'm not that big, but once you get big, they also have to start considering they have to, or they feel like they have to diversify a little bit more because now you're not only when you're potentially going to damage yourself from a bad decision or something, it's one thing, but when you've got thousands of employees and, like you said, board members and so on, and you don't want them to be without a job or be on the street or be homeless, you're like, well, it feels more weighty. Like you feel like even just having this podcast, all of a sudden you feel responsible for more than just yourself. When you feel like you're only responsible for yourself, it's much easier to take, I don't know, ridiculous risks.
Sure.
Um,
I mean, you look at it this way. Who would have thought? I never would have seen this. I thought that things like, especially coming up when I was a kid, there was one way to do like the music industry. There was one way to do it. It's a juggernaut. You're not going to change it, right? I mean, who would have thought that when iTunes came out, it was going to change the music industry forever? I
yeah.
mean, it maybe not forever. It's what it is right now because of iTunes.
Hmm.
If you don't have your music on Apple iTunes, you're not going to sell. You're just not going to. They change music forever.
Yeah.
Um, Places like Netflix and also Apple with Apple TV,
Hmm.
they changed the motion picture industry forever. They don't make movies like MGM, these other studios that are juggernauts. They're not anymore.
Hmm.
Netflix, Prime, Amazon, all these other people, they're basically movie companies now that are pushing the other people out of the way because of the way people consume those things now. And, they really changed and you think about in the very beginning, they probably got pushback on adding those things, and now they are absolute massive juggernauts in the industry now.
Yeah, imagine you're the founder of Netflix and you're pitching your board or your investors on or somebody asks you, "Well, how are we gonna show movies? How are we gonna send them by mail?"
Right,
If
right.
I heard that, I'd have been like, "I'm not giving you $1, man."
You know, these things were vending machines
Yeah.
in the very beginning, just sitting on the sidewalk in front of Walgreens and
Yeah,
CVS's,
Redbox. You're
and
talking about
now
Redbox.
they are funding and making their own movies. That's a huge leap. That's a huge leap. And they're extremely successful.
Yeah.
And, I think, Apple, Netflix, uh, Amazon, to a large extent, are very good at building new businesses. It's almost like all of these businesses took this same type of mentality that Kiyosaki had and just used it in their business.
Mhm. And the thing that makes it so easy for companies like them to do what they do is once you've done it once, it becomes much easier to do it again and do it again and do it
I think
again.
that they all had the right mentality of, I like what he said, especially in today's about thinking of the dollars that you make in your business as being employees
Mhm.
and not something that you get rid of.
Yeah.
Uh, these companies that I mentioned today had done a very good job of making money, reinvesting, making money, reinvesting. They're not making money spending. They're making money, reinvest, make money, reinvest. They're not making money and keeping and going and blowing it. They're reinvesting.
Yeah. Yep. And what I was what I was trying to get to earlier is that even though these companies started off taking big risks as they get bigger, especially when you look at somebody like Nvidia or Apple or Amazon, well now their their job is a little bit different because they've already had that monumental success that turned them into a multi-trillion dollar company. So now they don't have to do what they used to do. Well, I mean, they do, but in order to keep growing now, you have to the only way to do that pretty much is gobble up other companies. So
Mhm.
that's that's why now things, at least at the top, are starting to get a little
Do you
top heavy.
and see, I'm starting to see a lot of things just from listening. I listened to the book, but from listening to the book is that I'm starting to see things in a new way. You know, these guys, especially like him, who has also made a lot of money, like you said, by buying things and then reselling them, that kind of thing, holding on to them for a while and reselling. He's basically, the show Flip This House.
Mhm,
Well, he's flipped this business.
yeah,
That's what that's what they're doing. They buy something, fix it up, and resell it.
mhm,
Um, that's basically the business plan.
yeah,
Like when he said, like I got to the part where you mentioned this before. We talked about he's uncomfortable owning a business for longer than about 7 years. I'm sorry, a property, real
mhm,
estate for about 7 years. He resells it. Well, he didn't come to that number just by willy nilly. He didn't get up one day and say, I'm going to own a place for 7 years and sell it." There's a reason that he does that. He has figured out by crunching numbers that I'm not going to make any more money holding on to this place for 10 years. But and at 7, it's where I'm going to be good and profitable. I'm going to sell it there. So he
mhm,
figured that out.
yeah, and I mean, I see his point on that somewhat, and just like you probably don't agree with every viewpoint that he has, and granted, he's successful, so whether we agree or disagree,
Sure.
he's been successful, but I somewhat I'm not saying it's bad to flip a business or sell a business, but ultimately, once you understand what you need to understand about businesses, if you have something good, why would you ever let it go?
Right.
Now he's like I said, he's done well and he's been successful, but if you go and talk to Tim Cook or the family that started Walmart, again, Walmart's another good example here. They've held on to their company for generation after generation.
and they're having to readjust the way they do things because
Yeah,
other people
they
have
are.
have pressed them. You know,
And
they
that
have innovated, and I kind of think I think that Walmart is catching up, but for a little bit
they were behind. Yeah.
they rested too long,
Yeah, they definitely had to catch up quick when Amazon started expanding
kicking their
past
behind.
yeah,
Yeah,
past the bookstore. But I mean, they did it.
just like with Amazon, uh, they realized that as good as they were doing, as profitable as they were being, they were even going to have to open their own distribution company because these other people couldn't handle getting out their product as quickly as they wanted it out. So they had to buy into delivery and
Mhm.
logistics and all this. But they faced that problem, put the initial investment in, and I dare say, I promise you, Amazon delivery right now is more efficient than FedEx. They're more efficient than UPS. Those people have fallen way off compared to what Amazon is doing.
Yeah, that's really and truly what the main thing that impresses me about Amazon. It's not their website, it's not the prices or the products that they sell. It's how they were so easily able to get into fast shipping. Like to me, I shipping is a nightmare. Anything logistics really and truly is a nightmare to manage. So
Sure.
the fact that they were able to I mean, it felt like overnight. I'm sure it took longer than just overnight, but the fact that they were able to so quickly go into fast shipping and managing vans and logistics, I mean, it's crazy. Um,
They've basically turned into more of a logistics company than they have a retail company. And this is what's interesting is that uh how do I want to say this? It's almost like you know how Elvis when he was at the height of his popularity, he wouldn't record somebody's song unless they gave him publishing rights to it. They would have to sell him the song before he would
mhm,
record it. People were willing to do that because he was so successful, and they could you know that's the way they made their money by selling the song. Of course, he made his money off of the publishing rights, and
mhm.
he wouldn't record a song unless somebody would let him buy that. Now that's what Amazon is doing right now. You can't sell your product on their site unless they're making some money off of it.
Yep.
And that you know, they don't even they're to the point to where they don't even have to come up with products anymore. They just sit back and wait for people to come to them.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the reason that they did that is because they were killing off so many retail businesses that I don't know that this happened, but I have a feeling.
I mean, they got so successful they were hurting Walmart.
Oh yeah, I have a feeling that something. Do you remember? It can't have been that long ago. It may have just been a few years ago. Do you know anything about Alibaba, the Chinese company?
Uh, Kinda like a Temu
Yeah.
type business.
And I don't know, they may even own Temu, but the reason I bring them up is they're sort of like considered to be, or at least at one time they were considered to be the Amazon of China. And at one point, uh, Jack Ma, who was their CEO, I don't know, had gotten really popular and he did or said something that made Xi Jinping, who's the leader of China, angry. And for like half a year or a year, he like disappeared off the face of the earth.
Wow.
So, and it, nobody knew for sure, but you sort of did know that the government basically, or the theory is that the government took him and sort of slapped him on the back of the head
Mhm.
and had to straighten him out or something. And I, our government isn't like the Chinese government or any other government, but a part of me wonders if Amazon started becoming so successful that the government was like, all right, look, you're going to have to start letting some other business owners step in somehow, or we're going to have to
Kevin, I do
uh,
believe that
do
our
something too.
country, our government is much more like China than you would know. They're just
Yeah.
better at hiding it.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, we're definitely not as far off as we would like to be. And a great example of that
I mean,
is,
they're twisting Apple's arm now. They want some of that money.
yeah, well, what I was gonna say is, you know, we were talking about taxes before. Just the fact that our standard income tax rates are so high tells you right there that we're more like China than most people would like to believe.
Right.
Um, because there were, I don't know, 100 years plus, maybe 150 years where Americans had no income tax at all. Um,
Given, uh, we would have to have a much different infrastructure right now to handle it this way. However, think about this. If today, I mean, at the drop of a hat, 5 o'clock this afternoon, we're cutting off all benefits except for the elderly and the children, and it has to be a legitimate need, and we'll have people who take care of deciding whether it's a legitimate need or not, okay? Do you know how much our country would change almost overnight
oh yeah.
if we took away the majority of the entitlements that are out there?
I've got an opinion, you know, you mentioned the elderly. I've got an opinion that probably a lot of people wouldn't share, but I even think taking away and this is super unpopular and probably would never happen, but I don't even think people should receive any type of retirement check, any type of pension. I don't believe in any of that because in my mind, and this is biblical to me too, God never intended us to just stop working and sit around. Um, even if you become successful and you're making money and you could just sit still, that's really not what we're designed to do.
And
Um,
also, on that same point, the part in the scripture that talks about honoring your father and your mother, the majority of that statement is grounded and rooted in taking care of them.
mhm.
Honoring them was talking about taking care of them physically and financially, and that is, if we were doing that as well, we wouldn't have to be taxed for that. If your family was taking care of family like they should, you wouldn't have to take care of that. Churches take care of their congregations, and they should. And they do a good job at that. Families don't. And if
Yeah.
families did that, we would not have to tax for that.
Well, imagine if not only there was no income tax, but the people even 60 and older in your family were still working, whether it be in their own business or even if they're not working for an employer anymore, if they started their own thing. Imagine, because a lot of people end up in a scenario where their parents end up living with them because they're getting older and they need help. Well, imagine if they were still bringing in an income and now instead of one income or two incomes, you have three or four
Sure.
incomes and no taxes.
And it would also incentivize the type of thinking that Kiyosaki is advocating.
Hmm.
If you where if you didn't create assets, you're just not gonna make money. So
Yeah.
it would incentivize that, and it would force people to become more resourceful in that way of thinking.
Yeah. The reason you hear when you hear a multimillionaire or a billionaire talk about how pensions are bad and nobody should retire, everybody thinks like, oh, they're evil. They just don't want anybody to ever catch any slack. They want all the money. And I get why you would think that, but really the mindset is what you just said right there with assets. It's once you own assets that are bringing you in income without you having to do a whole lot, work is a whole lot easier because it's really that your assets, your digital employees are doing a lot of the work for you. You know?
Plus you may need to put a little time in, into the project, but it's basically, assets are what allow you to retire, right? I mean,
Yeah.
those, if you don't have to be there and you just have to put a little effort into it once you've created something, that's basically retirement.
Hmm.
And then you don't have to depend on those pensions and those retirement and that kind of and social security and all that. You have your own assets. You've built it, and that machine you've got running in it stays running.
Did you hear what Kiyosaki started talking about like right towards the end of that 2 hour and 30 minutes? Right towards the end of it, he started saying something along the lines of, or he really started discussing being an entrepreneur or business owner versus, or he was talking about how his poor dad works for the government and his rich dad, works for himself.
Sure.
And what he was getting at towards the end of that 30-minute section,
Mind your business.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, mind your own business.
Yeah.
And most people hear that and they think, oh, just don't gossip about others. But he twisted that into what it actually should be. And I mean, don't get me wrong, you shouldn't gossip or worry about other people or talk about other people in bad ways. But now you probably know what he means by mind your own
Sure,
business. It
sure.
means build out your own asset column. You spend all this time making somebody else a lot of money. Why not start spending some time making yourself money? Because ultimately, if all you ever do is be an employee and never build your assets, I mean, you made your boss a lot of money, but you didn't make any money for yourself, and
Sure.
that's
And I
not
think
fair to anybody.
I one of the ways that helps me remember the difference in assets and liabilities is my brain keeps going to a term that really doesn't mean what it says what you think it means, but passive income.
Mhm.
Once you set something up, you really don't have to put a lot of attention on it. It just makes money for you, almost running itself. No business runs itself completely. You have to put some time in it. But
But the less time, the better.
right, right.
Yeah.
Passive income, I think, is what really will get people's mind on the right thing using that term.
Mhm.
Passive income is an asset, and working 9 to 5 for a company is a liability, right? I mean, would you
Yeah.
would you would you look at it that way?
Um, I wouldn't call working 9 to 5 a liability because, like you said earlier about
But
create
you're not making money unless you're there, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, it does take your time, and eventually you want the majority of your income coming from things that don't take up your time, that's right, but initially, like you said earlier, a lot of people are not creative enough to, at least initially, come up with their own business because and here's what I'm trying to get at too. Kiyosaki, the reason he hasn't given you this, I know everybody when they hear his book looks for this like golden idea that's going to make them millions of dollars. And what Kiyosaki's doing instead of giving you that golden egg is he's trying to unwash your brain from decades of public school system teaching you how to be poor as opposed to teaching you how to build wealth.
Mhm,
And that's exactly what the school system teaches you is to get good grades, get ready for college, go get a degree, even if it's in basket weaving.
mhm,
They don't even always encourage you to get a good degree. They sort of encourage you to, I don't know, get whatever degree that you're interested in.
sure.
And so therefore, and I'm a college graduate, by the way. I got half my master's in business, but I realized that I knew more than they were teaching me and that it was a waste of money, and I dropped out of my MBA.
Sure.
And a lot of multimillionaires and billionaires, at some point, they drop out of college because they're like, this is now a liability because these professors, they know how to teach you a skill, but they don't know anything about making money. Because, and this is, I'm sure I'll get some hate for this, but if you're a teacher, again, you can teach certain skills, but the fact that you're a teacher and taking a low salary means you know little to nothing about making money. Um,
People come up with, people are very resourceful and very creative when it comes to, some of the first people who came up with things like drop shipping and that kind of thing. Now, I know that's been going on since the dark ages. I get that. But especially when the internet came along and the first few people figured out, hey, I can create a website. I can pay Google to put me at the top of the list if I'm willing to pay enough, at the top of the list of searches when they search for something. They can order a product. I can pay this company a little bit extra to ship for me, and I never have to touch it. I never have to pack anything. I never have to tape anything. I never have to take anything to the post office. They'll do it for me. And all I did was create this website, and somebody's using mine, and I get a little bit of that. And I never even have to look at it again. I never even have to look at the website again if I don't want to. And I'm making money by, even something that small. And I know that's a crude little small example, but even that is an asset. That's resourceful things. Now, granted, millions of people do that now, but
Mhm.
whoever came up with it first made some money off of that for a while, and that's that's a smart way of doing business. That is an asset, you know.
Yeah. And the truly smart ones, it sort of goes back to the analogy, if you've ever heard it, of the gold miner versus the guy that sells the gold mining tools. And it sort of goes back to what you were talking about, as opposed to selling teas versus selling them to the business owners who then sell them to the
Right.
customers. Um, Even though some drop shipping companies make a lot of money, like what you ran into and like what a lot of people run into, there's so much competition. You've got now probably millions or at least thousands of other business owners trying to do the same thing that you're doing. And the way to ultimately be really successful long term and get really big, like some of these mega companies have, is you have to, and this is something that Warren Buffett talks about, you have to find a way to build. Okay, you've got your passive income. Well, now how do you stop other businesses from coming in and destroying you? You have to build a moat. Going back to medieval stuff again, the idea of building a moat around your business,
Sure.
or in other words, competitive advantages that stop somebody else from just coming in and destroying you.
Sure.
So,
Even things like this, I've seen, and I'm into off-road vehicles as far as like Jeeps. I
mhm,
love them, and I've seen some really, really good, well quality built ones that had all the bells and whistles, really nice equipment on them. And I've also seen these companies that have these competitions and give them away. Okay.
mhm,
Uh, and they'll say things for like, for every $50 you spend at my website, you'll get a chance to win this vehicle right here, which is pretty cool. If somebody spends $50 at a website and they win a really nice built out Jeep, that's cool. However,
yeah,
they're selling that vehicle about 7 or 8 times at their website off those chances, and they're making 7 to 8 times what it cost them to build that vehicle just by selling little something like that is a little crude, stupid example, but they're making buku off of that because they came up with that. Now, are they taking a chance that people will actually buy to get those yeah, they are, but they win every single time.
yep. It's similar to how the lottery works.
Right, right.
Think about how popular the lottery is, but most people are spending money and never seeing a dime back.
Sure.
But everybody believes, oh man, there's a chance that I might be
Right,
that one
right,
guy that wins,
right.
500 million, especially once that pot starts getting real big, 500 million, a
Oh, yeah.
billion, everybody's convinced that, it'll be me. The universe owes me something.
Sure.
And that greed and that, I get that the lottery probably helps with more tax revenue being collected, but I'm still a believer that it's inherently unethical.
There's a
Um,
reason that phrase exists, "The house always wins."
yeah, it's inherently unethical to me because it motivates people to listen to their greedy side and convince themselves that they're going to be the one person to win the huge bat, which there are winners. There's always going to be a winner, but the odds of it being you are very, very, very small. Um,
As a Publishers Clearinghouse used to be fond of saying, "You can't win unless you play."
yeah. And I do not know. I mean, granted, maybe there's a few millionaires out there or whatever that won the lottery and that's why they are that way. But for the most part, I don't know of any millionaire or billionaire. I know a few billionaires that I don't, none of them that I know of have ever bought even a single lottery ticket.
Sure,
That's,
sure.
that's something that, one thing that is known to wealthy people is that is something that poor people do.
Mhm.
And that, uh,
I think you would be surprised, and I know you know this, but I was shocked at the behavior. I still am really, of some of the wealthiest people that they all do things the same. Uh, many of them. I'm not saying all of them. There are some flamboyant billionaires out there. You know that. But by and large, the majority of them, you think about this. By and large, the majority of billionaires don't buy new cars. They buy used cars. A billionaire buys a used car because he thinks it's a better investment. Something that small to a billionaire, and that's small to a billionaire buying a vehicle, but they know that that's the smartest investment is buying a used vehicle, you know?
The wealthiest guy that I know, um, I know at least his business it's probably worth more than $1 billion now. But I pretty much consider him a billionaire, even if he doesn't have that net worth because his business is worth more than that. But he, from what I know about him, and I've known him for a pretty good while, he's you would never know, like unless you really got to know him well, and even if you knew him your whole life, unless you really dug or he told you some things, you would still never know that he's where he is in terms of wealth because the only hobby, the only sort of wealthy person hobby that I know that he indulges in is golf.
Mhm.
And he, you know uh, like you said, there are some flamboyant billionaires, but most of them are actually pretty, I'm not trying to diss them, but pretty boring.
Sure,
Pretty
sure.
boring people, like routine. um
Kevin, I think
he
one of the hardest things for people to learn to do, and I think it's because, again, we live in a wealthy nation and people want to live like everybody else.
mhm,
One of the hardest things for people to learn to do, and it's an addiction, it really is. One of the hardest things for people to learn to do is to not live beyond their means.
mhm,
If you understand and get a mentality that says, no matter how much money I bring in, this is just the way that I'm living right here. This is the way I'm going to live. That is, I think, the biggest factor in building wealth is learning just because I have an extra $500 in my account this month doesn't mean I need to spend it. It needs to stay there or put it somewhere where it's going to make me money. Would you say that's the hardest thing for people to learn?
oh yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, you know who Charlie Munger is? Worked with
I don't think
Warren.
so.
He was like Warren Buffett's right hand man, basically his partner. Used to be an attorney, and then I don't know, somehow Buffett found him, and like I said, he ended up,
Sucked him into the business.
yeah, well, and turned him into. I'm pretty sure he was a billionaire when he passed away, but anyway, Charlie Munger. What was the quote that he? Oh shoot, my mind. What did you just? What was the
Just
last
talking
thing you
about
just
living
said?
beyond your means.
Yeah, one thing that shoot, dang. Let me get my train of thought back here.
No, it's all right.
Um. Anyway, Charlie said something that was I'll have to come back to it
What
because
what
I'm.
what was what was his quote on? Oh, I got it. I got it right here. I think. Is it spend each day? Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up.
Mm-mm.
Discharge your duties faithfully and well, step by
Shoot.
step.
Let me try to see if I can't find it. Oh shoot, I put the keyboard over here. Famous.
Now, this is a good quote by him. The big money is not in the buying, but in the selling.
Yeah, and that's true, but I think you should try and make.
This is a good one here. My system in life is to figure out what is really stupid and then avoid it.
Yeah, yeah. That's not the one I was thinking of, but
That's a good quote.
and honestly,
Uh,
that's one of that's still not the one. Maybe I'll think of it later. That's still not the one I was thinking of, but that is still one of the more important ones. Is that really, especially once you get to where you're already wealthy, your main job now is not doing anything stupid that's going to cause you to lose all that wealth that you've built up. And because most of these quotes are coming from them, while Berkshire Hathaway is already this huge company, so most of these quotes from them that came recently came from the perspective of a large company just not trying not to do anything stupid that would hurt their investors, you know, because now it's not nearly as much. I mean, it's still about them and them making money, some sure, but now they have all these investors and families that depend on the company to do well. And so now their mindset, instead of taking a big risk like they did originally, the mindset becomes, well, let's just not make any really dumb decisions now.
Right,
As long as
right.
we can generate somewhat of a return and not take on any real dumb business that's going to implode, you know.
Sure.
Um,
I I wonder, and I know that people enjoy a lot of the people that are going to do the things that I'm about to talk about enjoy it. Uh, but sometimes it's weird for me, like Jeff Bezos, some of these, Elon Musk, some of these really big innovators. I know that they enjoy what they do, or they wouldn't be doing it. But when a lot, part of me always wonders when they get to a certain point in their wealth, at what point would you say, "Okay,
enough is
I'm
enough.
I'm I'm quitting. I'm just gonna sell everything I have right now, because even if I spent as hard as I could, I couldn't spend all this money before I die."
Yeah.
Now, to me, it's almost a crime to me to not sit back and relax a little now. I mean, what do you think about that?
The answer to your question is never. And that's part of the reason why we're getting into dangerous territory now is because, and that's one of the biggest differences between people that build wealth and those that don't is, you know, the normal person always has the thought of, I want to get to where I can retire and just sit back and do nothing. Wealthy people don't think that way.
Well, and I'm not talking about doing nothing. I'm
Well,
talking about spending your time doing something that maybe you enjoy a little more than
yeah.
what you're having to do to build that wealth.
Yeah, well, I mean, and you know, even Bezos, I forget what he's doing now, but he did sort of step into a. He may still be a board member, but he's no longer the CEO like he once was. So I mean, plenty of them do step out of their main role, and but yeah, typically they go and end up working on something else. Um, so yeah, and I I know that there's some like Munger has the quote about selling a business and making money, and Kiyosaki's talked about, like you said, holding something for 7 years and selling it. But Buffett, who is the wealthiest out of all those guys, Buffett's mantra was a little bit different, and he didn't always do this, but Buffett would buy a business with the intention of hanging on to that business forever. Now, does he always hold on to things for forever? No, but he was famous for quoting, "If you wouldn't want to own something for 10 plus years, you shouldn't own it for 10 minutes." So he only wanted to buy things that he would never want to get rid of. Um, and the reason why the real wealthy folks typically
Well, see, doesn't that go against a little bit the mentality that Kiyosaki had?
a little bit, and like I said, Kiyosaki's done well for himself, and I agree with a lot of what he says, but I don't agree with always selling a business after 7 years. Now, if it's
Well, I mean, I think he was speaking in
well,
that
real estate,
respect specifically of
yeah,
real estate. Yeah,
but to me, real estate and a business are much more tied together than people think. Now,
Kiyosaki kind of strikes me as the kind of guy who made that decision because he got bored with something.
yeah, well, he and I don't want to talk bad about the guy. He's knowledgeable, but it's also to me a bit of a car salesman mentality, which is
I got you.
I don't really care how good the business is. I just want to build it up, sell it to you, and make money. And now it's your problem. And somebody like me or Buffett, I want the company to continue to grow so that, you know, not only I can do well, but the employees will do well, their families will do well. So you know, you have some of these multimillionaires and billionaires, the lower tier.
So Kiyosaki had more of a salesman attitude than
Mhm.
really of an investment type.
Well, he probably has more of an investment type mentality now, but, uh, I forget when this book was first written, but it's been probably many decades ago now,
Mhm.
but, initially, he started off, and I think he said this sometime recently within the past 30 minutes of what we were listening to. He worked for Xerox, or I don't know.
Mhm.
He worked for some company selling a product, and so that sales mentality is, you know, uh,
See,
bled into his
I
business mentality.
I know that you have met people like this. I'm definitely not one of them. I don't have a talent in that area. My son really is kind of good at this. It is really hard for me to look at something and go, I can make some money off of that if I sold it. I'm just not good at that, and I know that there are people that are. I've heard people say things like, this person could sell a ketchup popsicle to a lady wearing white gloves.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not one of those. In fact, most of the time, I could probably talk somebody out of buying something before I could talk them into it. But I know that it takes a talent to do that. I know that there are talented people that can do that. I kind of feel like that my mentality on that is a lot of times, and again, I'm not criticizing salesmen for this reason, but my mindset is I want to keep this person from making a bad decision. And a
Mhm.
lot of times, if you're going to be a salesman, you almost have the opposite. You have to have the opposite way of thinking
Yeah.
that I know this is probably not the best thing for this person to do, but I want to talk them into it. And
Yeah.
my mind doesn't want to do that.
Mhm.
I mean, does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're saying, and that's part of the
It's
reason.
almost like you're fooling them. It's almost like you
Yeah.
are. It's almost like on a smaller scale. I feel like I'm scamming them.
Yeah, well, sometimes people are scamming people, and yeah, I agree, and like I said, I did sales for a little while, but that's part of the reason, and don't get me wrong, a lot of businesses have to have sales, so, like, I'm not saying
Yeah,
nobody
yeah,
should
yeah.
be
No, I
salespeople,
understand.
but that's part of the reason why I stopped selling cars when I did is because I was like, "This is starting to feel really scummy,"
Right.
I I care nothing at all about whether somebody gets the right car. All I care about is, you know, my commission,
For
which,
instance, we all know, like with cars, sometimes you know some things about a car when you're selling it to somebody that they probably should know. And my conscience wants to go, I know they can't see this part underneath this car. They're probably not going to lay down underneath it, or they would see this part that's
mhm,
leaking oil. Am I going to tell them that this car is leaking oil, or am I just going to let them think that everything's okay with it and sell it? That's a conscience dilemma.
mhm,
You understand? And you understand what I'm saying? Those type of people, you feel like there's no feeling it's the truth. You're being dishonest
yeah.
when you don't give everybody all the information with the hope that they'll still give you your money. You're being dishonest with them.
Oh, yeah. No, it's true, and like I said, I don't believe sales is necessarily inherently bad, but there are a lot of sales structures that can quickly become bad, um, and yeah, you definitely, like you said, have to have a completely different mentality to do that, but the good news is, even if you don't think that way, um, or like a salesperson does, and you said you tend to think more about what's good for people and risk and that sort of thing. Well, that is more of the investor thought process. So even if you don't have a sales thought process, if you have an investor thought process, that's still a good thing to have. There's different thought processes depending on what the category is. There's sales,
I really kind
there's
of feel like
investor, there's
the difference in a
business
salesman
owner.
and an investor, like you talked about. I kind of feel like, uh, let me take care of this. Okay. I really kind of feel like if you believe in the product, you would be a good salesman. I'm a good salesman if I believe in it.
Yeah.
If I don't see downsides to this and I'm trying to sell you on something, I can do that.
Mhm.
Uh, you
But
know,
you're not gonna pitch something that's potentially bad for somebody.
sure. I
And
mean, one of
I
the
don't
best
want to
things,
either.
yeah, one of the best things to me, the best uh, seal of approval, I guess I should say, on a sale is if I ask a salesman, "Would you buy this?" and he says, "Oh yeah," uh, and if they're being truthful, that's a selling point to me. If you would put your own money into it, that's a selling point to me.
Yeah, and that's even though I did sell cars, it was a little bit easier for me, even though I eventually decided to step away from that because I was working for Toyota, the
Mhm,
Toyota dealership.
mhm.
I knew that the vast majority of vehicles that I was selling to people were going to last them a long time if they
Mhm.
took care of them. So
Yeah, I was about to say that's a
yeah.
quality product.
Now I would never, and I'm, I got to be careful about bashing brands here. There are a couple of brands that you could not have paid me, you know, $200,000 to have worked for, because they're known for falling apart.
Sure, sure.
So yeah, there are plenty of salespeople that don't really care. Well, hopefully not plenty of them, but there are definitely salespeople out there that don't care how good the product is. Like I said, they only care about commissions. Uh, and those, unfortunately, those salespeople tend to do pretty well in sales, and the ethical people sometimes don't do as well. I was doing pretty well, but like I said, I was fortunate enough to be selling something that a product that mostly is good for people. But uh, the other problem with selling something like vehicles is even if you're giving them a good product, the financing, just like with a mortgage, sometimes can be bad for the person. Uh, vehicles. I think that vehicles now have overtaken, the nice new home as being the number one destroyer of wealth for people trying to build wealth. And we live in a country where, unless you live in like New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, most of us have to have a vehicle to get around because people outside of the United States, I'm finding, don't really have much of a concept of how large the United
Yeah, yeah.
States
I
is.
hear
That,
that a lot.
yeah, like in Europe, I've heard that you can ride across just about the entire island of the UK in, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour or something. Or like I've heard,
Well, they're sitting on top of each other over there, aren't they?
yeah, I've heard somebody from England say me having to drive 30 minutes is a deal breaker. Like, it's a
Right.
deal breaker to them. Whereas,
The entire nation of Israel is the size of New Jersey,
yeah,
you know?
whereas an American driving an hour to work might be normal for some people.
Right.
So,
Here is one that I ran across. I've been looking at a few after you mentioned his name. I like this one. Munger says, "It takes character to sit with all that cash and do nothing. I didn't get to where I am, by going after mediocre opportunities."
you said Kiyosaki said that?
No, Munger.
Oh, Munger. Yeah. Yeah.
Knowing which opportunities are good, is a skill as well, I think.
Yeah, no, what another reason why I like, and again, I like Kiyosaki because he's good at getting people unbrainwashed. But to me, the more knowledgeable businessman is Buffett, because what Buffett does and why he became so successful is he does just that. He sits on top of cash that he's earned for a little while until he finds an opportunity that he deems worthy of investing in. And ideally, to become like a true investor, you only become like a true investor after you have already had your own business, built up a lot of cash flow, and now you're receiving so much cash flow that you have to figure out what to do with all the cash flow.
Mhm.
That's when you're a true investor. Um, so, and he probably been doing that. I mean, he just retired. Buffett finally did retire, like, I don't know, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago. And he's in his 90s. But what he did for
which is a
years.
testament that he loved what he did
Oh,
too.
yeah. Well, for years and years, especially after well, even before he made all of his money, what made him so successful is he would spend hours, and I'm not saying everybody has to do this, everybody has families and kids for the most part, but he would spend hours every day doing nothing but looking for new investments to invest in. And back in his day, you know, didn't have the internet or stock screeners. He used to use these things called Moody's manuals, um, which were like a paper, a bit of a paper stock screener. Like they would, I guess, tell you all the different financial information about certain companies.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I don't even know what they looked like, but apparently you used to could buy these books or manuals that were called Moody's manuals,
Mhm.
and he would spend all day just turning page after page looking for, which is actually pretty crazy to think about because now any company, any public company I want to look up, I can go to the stock screener and pull it up and all the information's right there. But back in his day, he would have to read one entire manual, and if he didn't find something he liked in there, he'd have to go to the next manual. And because I mean, he was manually looking at every publicly listed company. He just didn't have a computer, so he was having to flip page by page
Mhm.
to. uh, and if you ever get to the point to where you start looking up stocks on a screener or on Google, you'll really gain a much better appreciation for how tedious what he did was.
And people have no idea how hard things were just a few short years ago. In my lifetime, you had to go to the library and look through the
Dewey Decimal.
to find a book to write a report.
Mhm.
It was actually it was extremely tedious to have to write a report and find all the sources that you were required to have. Now you can have it in milliseconds in your hand,
Mhm.
and people just don't understand, especially the younger people, how easy and good they have it now.
Yeah. No, it's everything is that's part of the problem with, and I'm not gonna sit here and bash my generation and the younger generations about everything, but like you said, one thing that typically keeps them down is the mindset of, you know, they don't realize that yeah, they do have it easier in terms of technology, but the other problem with my generation and those younger is they have this mindset of it's always somebody else's fault instead
Mhm.
of acknowledging when something is your fault. They're like,
Mhm.
what are you doing to make your life better? But instead it's blame the boomers, blame whoever.
In short,
Um,
too many of the latest generations are buying into what the government is selling.
yeah, yeah. And that's, it's making them bigger and more bloated. And over time, if it continues, taxes will go up. There are countries in Europe. I forget which country exactly, but I want to say one of the European countries, they tax their citizens somewhere between 40 and 50%. Uh,
Crazy.
yeah. I mean, and another thing that Kiyosaki said somewhere in this past 30 minutes that we listened to, he said something like, most people spend 6 months or more just working to pay the government and pay their
Oh, yeah.
mortgage and so on.
Oh, yeah.
If people were able to see the breakdown of how much you spend just covering your food expenses, your housing, and your taxes, they'd be furious.
Sure.
Um, but people like him and me can see that. And in order to be able to do that, you have to be unbrainwashed from what the system has taught you to think about. Um, it,
The most effective, quotes like that to me have been they break it down into a year. They'll tell you, you work from January to April or so before you start making a profit.
mhm.
Things like that. Those are sobering thoughts.
Yeah.
They and that's what should be taught in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason they don't is because, you know,
It doesn't fit the narrative of the people who are teaching. Yeah.
yeah. It's, well, do I want to create more business owners or competitors, or do I want to create employees that are just going to help me even more? It's
Right.
a
Oh, sure.
very selfish mindset. But in order to build wealth and help others, um, you got to help yourself. I'm not saying that you have to only think about yourself, but you do have to help yourself some in order to be in a position where you can effectively help others.
If a person is willing to tell the people the truth, even if it hurts their position, that's when you know that you're listening to a good conscience.
Hmm.
Somebody who will hide the truth from someone just because it profits them,
Stay away.
that's an unscrupulous
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them.
Sure,
There's a lot of them.
sure.
Um, and that, yeah,
That's every person in the government.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And they try to, and part of the reason they're so effective is they spin it exactly the other way. And
Sure,
don't get me wrong, there are wealthy people that do bad things, but it's far more common among bureaucrats and politicians than it is
oh, sure.
wealthy people. And the reason that people don't want to believe that is because just like we have a natural sinful inclination towards greed, we also have a natural and sinful inclination towards envy. And
Sure,
really and truly, envy is even stronger than greed
sure.
is, which goes back to the Robin Hood mentality of, you know, somebody else is really rich. Well, why do they have so much money? Why aren't they giving it to everybody else? And we get back into the exact cycle that we're in now.
Sure.
And that's exactly how governments want you to think that way because that gives them more power. And another thing, we'll probably wrap up here pretty shortly, but another thing that he mentioned that I wanted to relay is that, he talked about his poor dad being a government guy, and he said that his poor dad, the more employees that he hired and the more bloated he made his government organization, the more he was respected and the more potentially salary increases that he would get. So he was basically rewarded for being inefficient.
Sure.
Whereas Rich Dad, the business owner, was rewarded for being more efficient. Now, I'm not, he talked about having fewer employees and greater resources. And so I know it would sound terrible to say that for, and you hear about companies laying off a lot of employees all the time, but I mean, to an investor in your business, the less expenses that you have, it's not about like firing an employee. It's about how much income the business is bringing in versus the expenses or the overhead.
Mhm.
So,
I like how he talks about his poor dad in that he understood that his poor dad had good intentions,
mhm.
but it was more of a realization that his poor dad had bought the lie. And I'm not calling his poor dad ignorant because I thought he was stupid, but he bought the lie from the government that he believed that they had his best interest at heart, and the government does not have your best interest at heart.
Yep. Well, no, what you said right there is exactly what it all comes down to. It's not that the people like poor dad are stupid. It's just that honestly, there's no really nice way to say this necessarily. The people, and I'm not saying you should be a gangster or a bad person, but honestly, somebody that can think like a bad person, unfortunately, typically ends up doing much better than somebody that can't can't think that way because if you've either at one time been a bad person or know how to think like one, you understand that the government doesn't care a bit about you. You understand that other people, for the most part, could care less about what your interests are. Whereas if you've always been a very good person, uh, you immediately trust everybody else, which is not inherently a bad thing. I mean, trust and faithfulness is great,
You
but
should be able to.
yeah, you should be able to do that. But the reason that we can't is because we live in a sinful
That's
world
right.
and people are greedy and envious. And that's exactly why the vast majority of people, and also why it's not.
It is a it is it's a form of theft. If I'm able to scam you into giving me your money, I'm stealing your money. That's basically what I'm doing, and that is what people need to understand. When a politician looks at you and lies to you, it's not because he thinks he's just gonna make you feel a politician lies to you for one reason and for one reason only, to get your money.
Mhm.
That's the reason a politician lies to you.
Yep. And unlike most of us, where we have ethical dilemmas and we have things that we're not willing to do, a lot of the reason that a lot of these politicians become so successful is they don't have any standards by which they abide by. Their only standard is, make decisions that are going to be what's best for me and my family.
Sure.
They don't care a bit about constituents. They care about the lobbyists that are representing some big company, uh, and they care about their interests, and they pretend to care about public interest just so much that they can get elected. But
Sure.
then,
And
at
and 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 I've heard people say that too, that they believe, "No, it's not so they can get your money, it's so they can get elected." Well, what are they doing when they get elected? They get your
yeah,
money. Who's paying their salary?
oh
You
yeah,
are.
yeah. No, it's definitely you know. eh, Somebody else explained it too. I can't remember if it was Kiyosaki or somebody else that I was listening to, but I think it probably was Kid. Well, a mixture of him and somebody else. They said that once that income tax hit for the first time, originally, when we first got an income tax, it was supposed to be just a temporary, oh, we just need this to fund the war for a little while or whatever.
Mhm.
But then the
Only
go
problem is it never stops.
yeah, I was gonna say the government realizes, well, hang on a minute, we're bringing in billions of dollars. Why would we
That's right.
stop this?
It
And then,
it's the same mentality with a toll road. You're supposed
mhm,
to have a toll up just as long as it takes to pay for that road. Well, guess what? The toll never stops,
yep.
even when they get it paid for.
And now think about not only that there's a federal income tax that we still get hit with that's very heavy, but like you said, there's toll roads that haven't stopped. Now there's lottery organizations that are able to continue to collect money on that. There's property taxes, there's sales tax. I mean, there's even a restaurant here locally in Mississippi. Not only is there a sales tax, but there's like certain restaurants, I don't know if you've noticed, but you end up paying more tax on your bill than you would
Sure.
just for so there's a restaurant tax here too.
Right.
It just eventually it's gonna come down to the people are either gonna force them to do the right thing or there's gonna be a lot of blood and there's gonna be another war. It's one or the other is bound to happen eventually, unless people are just willing to be screwed over, which so far people have been willing to be screwed over, but I think at some point people are going to be like, the government's going to get so bloated that people are going to get fed up and we're going to be in another revolutionary type scenario.
Mhm.
But I mean, I hope a better scenario happens and it doesn't come to blows, but I don't know. It feels to me like that's sort of where things are headed now.
That's right.
Either that or the top 10, 15 corporations, if they're successful with their AI endeavors, um, they're going to be the ones that end up in power. Because another thing that these politicians either didn't think about or didn't care enough about is although they're making all this money because they've taken on so many corporate interests via lobbyists, they've enabled some of these corporations to grow so powerful that once a company becomes worth $4 or $5 trillion, that company can, I mean, maybe the government has a way of watching them or monitoring them, but once you're that big, these companies can afford their own private army. They could start building their own weapons. And
Mhm.
what if they all decided to get together and destroy the government? I mean, then we're in another aristocracy type
Sure.
situation.
And
That's where we're headed.
one of the things, and I know this number to some people may not sound very big, but it's still a big number. just under 15% of all people who are employed in the United States work for the government. Okay. Now, I know that sounds like a small number. When you get 15% of people depending on the government for a paycheck, that's a large percentage. Uh, and when you hear things about like the government shutting down and that kind of thing, there's over 20 million people who are employed who work for our government.
Yep, and that's what you just said right there. And remember how Doge was all the talk for a little while? That's part of the reason why you don't hear about it as much anymore. I think there's still some things that they're trying to do to be more efficient, but part of the reason Elon and others found it so hard to make the government more efficient is exactly what you just said. There's so much dependency on it now that if you try to take that stuff away, everybody that's middle class and poor thinks that you're trying to attack them.
Oh, the
And that
government would
and
love
that's
if it was 100%.
yeah,
If it was 100% of people working for the government.
yeah. But what the poor and middle class don't understand is those benefits that they cling to and the pay that they cling to from these organizations is exactly the thing that's keeping them dependent and stopping them from
From gaining wealth.
from gaining wealth.
That's
Yeah.
right.
But a lot of people just absolutely refuse to hear that, because once you've once you've milked something for so long or you've been dependent on something for so long, the only way to change that mindset is for something really severe has to happen. Or, you know, that the entire point of this Rich Dad Poor Dad book isn't to give you the next great $1 million idea. The entire point of this entire book is just to wash your brain off to try to get rid of the public school thought
Sure.
process. it
Sure.
it's all it's trying to do is redirect you from working for somebody else to, all right, well, how can I start not just helping my employer, but how can I start finally helping myself? And that's really all that I mean, I don't think there's a part in the book where he mentions a specific, I mean, he talks about real estate and businesses, but yeah, there's not the whole entire point of this book is just simply trying to get you from one thought process to another thought process.
People need to learn that most governments, including ours, they need to think of it as a business who got permission to brainwash your children to work for them.
Mhm.
That's what they are. The government is a business who requires your kids to go to a place and tell you why you need to think a certain way and why you need to work for them.
Yep. And if you think about it, prior to the Industrial Revolution, you know, what do we think that most Americans were doing? My guess would be most of them were farmers,
That's right.
even if it was a small bit of land, which basically means that even though they didn't think about it like this at the time, back in the day, everybody was basically their own little business owner. They ran their own little farms. And
Most
now,
people got along fine and didn't have a job. Think about that.
yeah,
Most people got along,
yeah,
fed their family, raised them, taught them with no money.
yep. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everything back then was better. They didn't have the technology that we do now and so on. And I'm definitely not saying that I doubt there's any way that everybody could just go back to having a farm,
Sure.
but like we've been saying this whole episode, if you can just find an idea, or even if you don't find an idea to start a business, if you just start buying into other businesses, you know, you can start actually building something for yourself for a change. And then once you do that, and I'm not saying you have to build yourself up to help others, you can still be poor and help others. The Bible talks about this for sure. But it becomes much easier and much more efficient to be a good steward once you're at an advantage, as opposed to, or once you've built a little bit of wealth, as opposed to doing it while being poor.
And I know we gotta go, but quick before we go, what do you think about? Because I mentioned to you this off camera the other day. What do you think about Musk's companies about to go public.
Public. Um, what did you?
It
It was
was
SpaceX and
SpaceX.
XAI.
It was
Yeah,
SpaceX
Tesla's already
and his
public.
SpaceX and his AI company. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I figured what was going to happen is that SpaceX
What do you
was.
think about it? I guess I'm saying, what do you think about investing in those?
Oh, um, to me, it all depends on the numbers. Like if just like I treat every other investment, although it's people get excited about that sort of thing. One way that you're becoming a successful investor is you don't immediately get excited by these new IPOs that other people get excited by. I I will have to see the balance sheet and the income statement. I've got to see if he's even making any money with these businesses because although I know Tesla's making money,
Well, as far as SpaceX goes, he's kind of the only game in town.
yeah. Well, what is their internet modem for what's that thing called? Anyway, I know that one of his companies has uh I don't know an internet that a lot of people purchase, but
Oh, you're talking about the access to internet. You're talking about the satellite.
I can't think of what it's called.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but anyway, I if XAI is getting most of their money and contracts from the government, then I'm not going to be nearly as excited about that company as I would be if I saw where they were generating.
Starlink.
Starlink got you. Hang on. If I saw that all their money was coming from government contracts, I feel like I wouldn't be that excited about it. But if I saw where they were generating millions or billions of dollars from SpaceLink and other endeavors, then I might would invest in it. But
Well, see, even private companies are paying SpaceX to put their satellites up. So, uh, I don't know. I kind of think that, and I don't believe that they'll be the last company to come along to have the technology to do that. He's definitely got the money to invest. I mean, because they have come up with some tremendous technology. You've seen those things land, and you've seen them take off, and how they're able to save their product. They don't lose it by dumping it in the ocean and all that kind of stuff anymore. They land back on the pad they came off of, and they're able to reuse their product. I mean, their technology is proven, and I don't know if I had some money to invest, I mean, I'd have to look at it, but I mean, I don't know. It's intriguing.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's definitely interesting. And that oh, here we go again. Hang on, just a sec. I don't know where all this coughing's coming from.
Oh, you good?
Um, but like take XAI for example. I know that Elon's been developing some humanoid robots, and that's something that a lot of people are really excited for. So let's say that we've had this talk before, but let's say that the optimistic AI scenario plays out and robots work out well and they don't try to kill us all. And instead they decide to be everybody's household servants, which is what basically this is the scenario that everybody is hoping happens. They're hoping that robots and AI is going to be the humble servant of humanity.
Sure.
And I mean, hopefully it does end up being that way. And if the optimistic scenario does play out and everybody's able to have a household robot to help them out with things, well, now that is a very, very bullish scenario for somebody like XAI because, um, whether I mean, if they just sell the robot flat out, they'll probably still make a lot of money doing that. But I have a feeling that these robots are going to require some extra management. So imagine if, in order to have one of these robots, you paid a subscription to XAI for them to help manage and update this robot that you've bought from them. Well, now they're generating a regular recurring income from these robots that they've sold you. So X to me, the more intriguing business and SpaceX is intriguing, but to me, the more intriguing one would be XAI if AI plays out the way that big corporations want it to play out.
Well, just what you're saying there, because they're grouped together, uh, it's kind of, I guess.
Yeah, you had I guess you have to have both. That's
Right.
I keep forgetting about that they're gonna be merged together or whatever, so
Yeah, the only thing he's not including in that is Tesla.
yeah.
Tesla, its own entity, is not included in that IPO.
Yeah. Although, I don't know, there's a way that
See, that's
eventually they
kind of
could combine them all, but
right, but
I don't
that's
know if
kind
they'll.
of, which is what Meta did. I mean, Meta's done the same thing, but, uh, I guess you have to look at not only if you wanna invest in this coming IPO, you've gotta get the numbers on both companies to see because they're merged.
Yeah. Yeah, that's and I don't even know if you'd be able to break it out like that. If they become one company, it might all be on the same balance sheet and income statement and so on.
Right, so if one's successful and one's not, what are you, just breaking even? I mean.
Yeah. I mean, either way, even if you can't see the separate financials, if you see the financials and see that overall it's unprofitable, then, I personally, if I see that it's unprofitable, I'm not going to step into it unless I know 99.9% for sure that they're going to become profitable.
Sure.
Now, a lot of people.
Now that's awfully that's a high standard,
Oh, yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah, it is. I was gonna say the vast majority of companies, especially technology companies, are not in that position. Most of them start off losing money. But in order and some people do play that game where they invest in, unprofitable companies, and you can make a lot of money doing that, but you're also taking on the most amount of risk. That is the most risky thing to invest in, is something that is a growth stock that is unprofitable that you believe in the future is going to generate a lot of revenue. That is the most risky approach that you can take, but it's also the approach that can make you the most money. So you have to decide what level of risk you are comfortable accepting personally.
This I looked up a quick statement. It says, as of February 2026, SpaceX has acquired XAI, combining a highly profitable cash-generating aerospace leader with a fast-growing but cash-burning AI startup, targeting a combined value of roughly 1.25 trillion. SpaceX is leading with an estimated 2026 EBITDA
EBITDA. Mhm.
of 10 billion, while XAI's reported 2025 revenue of roughly 3.8 billion has been heavily burning through cash to compete in the AI race, it says.
Yeah.
Um,
And before we move on, I've talked about EBITDA before. And for those of you that don't know what that is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So basically, what it's saying is earnings without any help. so, so the fact that they're making 10 billion in terms of EBITDA is actually
well,
pretty good.
that's SpaceX.
Yeah.
3.8 for the AI company.
Yeah. No,
So right
I'm
now it looks
surprised
as if SpaceX is
SpaceX
the
is the
highly
better.
profitable, you know.
Yeah. No, I'm surprised. Well, I guess when you.
Well, it's new.
Yeah.
It's not as SpaceX been around.
Well, even yeah, and even though that's their EBITDA number, I'm I'm willing to bet that just about all of that money is coming from the government. So you also have other successful companies that have made a lot of money from government contracts like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, all of the defense contracting companies make most of their money from the government, and they've done really well. It's just that. And again, people think that the government's untouchable and nothing bad would ever happen to the government. But whether people believe it or not, there's always a risk that a government can implode. So if a company gets all of their revenue from the government, I tend to really not want to be involved in that company. So what I'm saying there is EBITDA is a good metric, but if all of that $10 billion is coming from government contracts, that's a little concerning to me.
Sure.
I want the business to also have streams of income that are coming from outside of the government. But I mean they could continue to do really well. And I mean, he's the only person that I know of. I don't I don't know if NASA's taking on many projects right now in terms of like probably not because the government's so broke. So,
Yeah, I think they're making more of their money off of private companies than they are the government, especially with
SpaceX.
the satellites.
Yeah.
It says right here under profitability, it says highly profitable with estimated 2025 net income around 8 billion, over 15 billion in revenue. And this is according to Reuters and
Their
Bloom.
net income is 8 billion. Oh yeah, they're in real good shape.
This is according to Reuters and Bloomberg. Um,
Yeah, if their net is 8, then yeah, they're doing real good.
Revenue drivers driven strongly by Starlink, estimated 2025 revenue of 12.3 billion.
For the year, 12 point. Yeah, they're doing good. And they're claiming a valuation you said of 1.1 trillion, something like that.
1.25.
1.25 trillion.
One and a quarter.
So they're doing good. They're making a lot of money, but what you just told me right there tells me that the PE ratio is going to be pretty high and you're going to pay a premium to own that. And I don't know, another metric. PE ratio stands for price to earnings ratio. It basically gives you an idea of how expensive a stock really is. Most people look at the price per share or the share price, and they think if something has a smaller share price that it's cheaper, and that's not necessarily the case because you don't know how many shares outstanding there are in the company. The true metric that tells you how expensive or cheap a company is that PE ratio. So let's say SpaceX had a PE ratio of 50. That would mean that if earnings and revenue stayed exactly where they are, it would take you 50 years to make your money back. And it sounds like their PE ratio to me, just off the top of my head, sounds like it's going to be somewhere in that range. So if you're comfortable owning them or some company for 50, you're cool with holding it for 50 years, then that's one thing. But I mean, again, the market moves based off of how many people are buying versus how many people are selling. So if people continually buy the stock, even though it's expensive, you could continue to do well because the price is going to rise as long as people are buying.
Sure.
But
I would I would bank on the fact that you could make a little money because there's going to be excitement around this.
yeah, I would think the share price is going to continue
Especially
to,
initially,
yeah, yeah. But the problem with doing that right once a company IPOs is sometimes people will get lucky and the price will shoot up, but a lot of times and I mean they are profitable, so that's in their favor, but a lot of the time something will go public and it'll just
Mhm.
drop down to the bottom.
Yeah.
So you're definitely taking a big risk, but it's less of a risk if the company
But I've
is
also
profitable.
noticed that staying with it, it normally comes back and recovers
Yeah.
to me. Now,
Well,
it also says here, and I don't know anything about this, maybe you can help me out. It says structure, it says the deal converts XAI shares into SpaceX stock at a ratio of 0.1433 to 1. Now, I don't know what that means, but
wait, say that one more time.
it converts SpaceX stock. It converts AXI shares into SpaceX stock at a ratio of 0.1433 to 1.
Huh. That means that well basically what that means, if my understanding is correct, is that SpaceX's shares are valued much, much less than,
Sure.
so it's saying for every point whatever XAI share that you have, that's what you'll get in terms of the new stock, I think is what
Gotcha.
that means. So basically, if you were an investor in XAI, you're going to benefit less than you would being an investor of
Sure. Well, that
SpaceX.
makes sense to me because it shows that
One's
they're
more profitable and
right,
one's not, you know?
right. They are about it looks like they're about a quarter right now of the profitability of SpaceX.
Yep. So that's whatever that figure is that you just read off, that's, you know, in
Yeah, yeah.
proportion to what that is,
They're making it
basically.
proportional. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep. Or that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that more, um, but yeah.
It says while SpaceX provides a lifeline to the capital intensive XAI, the combined entity is positioned as a 1.25 trillion top tier tech competitor, he says.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I'll tell you what it sounds like. And he may not have, I don't know, the infrastructure for this. I can tell you right now, with as good as NVIDIA is doing, maybe Musk needs to start creating chips.
yeah, nah, well,
I mean, it looks like NVIDIA is the only game in town too with that almost.
yeah, well, there's a few others like Taiwan Semiconductors or whatever, but I mean, NVIDIA does have the best GPUs, stands for graphics processing unit. And, but the funny thing about NVIDIA, originally they only made those to make better and better computers.
Right,
And most of the people that bought these GPUs were folks that play video games like me.
right,
And then lo and behold, one day somebody figured out that these chips are, good for the purposes of AI. And
right,
that's when NVIDIA really started to shoot
right.
up in value. Data centers and all these things have compounded to help NVIDIA in their position. But to the point about Elon Musk going into that as opposed to XAI, he would be, I mean, and maybe he could figure it out. He is a pretty smart guy, but he would be years and years, if not decades and decades, behind in terms of technology. For Nvidia to be that,
See, NVIDIA, like you talked about earlier, they're the gold digging supply company, right?
yeah, yep, yep. They supply they are the mining, or they are
The
the
mining equipment, yeah,
mining equipment company as opposed to the miner. Yeah. Um, Everybody needs those GPUs to make, or at least for now, to make AI work and function. So everybody else is digging for gold, and they have to go buy their shovel from Nvidia.
yeah.
So
NVIDIA seems like they're the sure bet right now. You know,
yeah, well, that's typically how it works, and I mean they are, at least they were, if they're not now, the largest and wealthiest company in the United States. And what and that's typically what people want to buy and invest
as the
in.
supply company,
Yeah.
they are the wealthiest.
Yeah. And
That's
that's typically the sort of thing that people want to invest in. But another thing that I try to teach people is, yeah, you might make some profit from that, but traditionally speaking, once a company gets that big, it's more of a liability than it is an asset, because now, under typical scenarios, you would have, if the government's doing what it's supposed to be doing, they have the threat of being broken up because they're getting too big, which,
plus. Look, I know it's basically like this with any company. I get it. If something comes along that processes these things better than they do, they're dead overnight.
yeah, well, and the bigger a company is, the longer it takes you, and this sounds greedy, but to me, this is the best way to think about it. The bigger a company is, the longer it takes you to double your money potentially. So since they're worth, let's say, $4 or $5 trillion, they have to become a $9 or $10 trillion company for you to make a 100% return.
I got you.
Whereas if you invest in a small company, let's say you invested in something that was $10 million, $20 million, viewed as a penny stock and super risky, that's the type of stock that would make you, if it goes well, it can go bad, but if it goes well, that's the type of investment that would turn the average guy into a multimillionaire.
Uh,
Um,
uh, for
Multimillionaires,
example, Bitcoin.
yeah. Well, but the reason why I've always hated on cryptocurrency, although Bitcoin has done well, is it's not a business.
Right,
Uh,
right.
Now that's not to say that you can't make money from it, but
But it
Bitcoin,
is a penny stock that went big,
yeah, well, it's not a stock, it's not a business.
or whatever.
It's and this is well, this is not a minimal thing. This is, um, it's important to understand the difference between commodities, business, uh, and so on, because somebody like me, the reason that I never got heavy into crypto is I viewed, or currency. You have currency, commodities, and businesses and real estate. And so to me, crypto is either a commodity or a current. Well, it's a currency. So I view Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, in the same manner that I view a dollar or a ruble, even though people say, "Oh, it's decentralized and there's a cap on how many can come out." But and I know gold and silver are still way cheaper and have gone up way slower than Bitcoin has, but I know many different industries and many different things that gold and silver are involved in, whereas Bitcoin is just,
It seems more like a fad.
it's, well, it could continue to do well, but the whole point that I'm trying to make with this conversation is Bitcoin doesn't have employees, it doesn't have an employer. It's just a thing that was designed by somebody to act as a currency. So you could make money from it, but this whole thing that we're talking about building assets and building a passive income, that is not what cryptocurrency is. Cryptocurrency is, I'm putting my dollars into another type of currency in the hopes that it's going to continue to do what it's done for the past 10 years.
Mhm.
But it's not, I don't even consider it an investment, because to me, investing means you're investing in a business that has employees, that generates income from assets within the business. Whereas crypto, you're just buying it hoping that the value continues to go up, and it may, but to me, there's no, it's like the home on the foundation. To me, a business is a home on a nice sturdy stone foundation, and crypto is a house built on clay, shifting clay, you know.
Sure.
But I mean, plenty of people disagree with me though, so I'm not saying you have to listen to me and not have any cryptocurrency, but I'm just saying that I choose to stay away from it personally.
Sure.
But, but yeah, I mean it. You know, you can't argue that Bitcoin has had a, I don't even know the term, but a meteoric rise. It's still worth, I think, 80 something thousand a coin, but to me, the better time to buy Bitcoin would have been yesterday, or
Sure,
and
sure.
by yesterday I mean 10 whatever years ago,
Sure.
when it was $50.
Sure.
To me, looking at Bitcoin now is like saying, I wish I had some Amazon stock. That's history. Like, that opportunity is no longer for you
Or
anymore.
Apple stock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You missed the train. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you've got to catch the
Yeah,
next train.
buying into everybody said likes to think, I would have loved to have had $1,500, 2,000 in Apple stock in the '80s, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course. I mean, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
If we all had the benefit of hindsight, in all these things, everybody would be rich, you know?
Hmm. But that's exactly that's what makes investing in business ownership so astounding, I guess, is the fact that, and it's, part of it's the knowledge that anybody can potentially catch that windfall that can make you very, very wealthy. But it also shows you that identifying these opportunities is far more challenging sometimes than people
Oh, because at the
initially
time
think it is.
yeah, at the time, I would
Yeah.
have told you there's no way they'll ever be as big as PCs.
Yeah. Oh
No
yeah.
way.
Yeah. But yeah, it just goes to show you that the importance of time and the importance of identifying a good opportunity early before everybody else starts jumping into it.
When the iPhone came out, little Nokia, they were the top dog. If you
Oh
didn't have
yeah,
a Nokia
the
phone, you
bricks.
just didn't have a good phone.
We called it the Nokia brick, because you could throw it at a wall and it wouldn't break.
That's right. And now if you're not Samsung
Yeah,
or Apple, you don't have a good phone.
yeah, yeah. Um, I think in recent years, and I haven't tried them, so I don't know for sure, but I think in recent years there is a little bit more competition. Like, and although Nokia isn't as prominent as it once was, I want to say they do have their own
They do. Sure.
smartphone platform now. So, but like you said, the ones that are known for being of the highest quality, at least for now, are Samsung and Apple.
Sure.
And
And at that same time, it was cool to have a BlackBerry too. BlackBerries were cool back during that time.
yeah, I think Blackberries took over sometime right after Nokia's. It sort of, to me, it went Nokia, then BlackBerry, then we got into iPhone and Samsung
Right.
after that. And somehow Google came in there with Android or whatever. But um, and I think I almost want to say now Samsung basically owns Android, or
That's
I
right.
don't know if Google still has a percentage of that or what, but yeah, it's changed a lot, and that's something that very few people would have visualized to have it happen and be able to make the shift to invest. And it's nobody has a crystal ball to know the future, so it's much easier to look at the past and see, I should have invested in Amazon, I should have invested in Apple. But even though you can't have a crystal ball for the future, you want to get as close to that as you can if you want to be a good investor, because you need to be looking for the opportunities that nobody else has discovered yet.
Sure.
That's what, if you want to be a successful investor, you either have to start your own business or find a business to invest in that nobody else sees as much potential in as you do.
Right.
That's basically the sauce. And the good news is, even though it's really hard, like you said, not everybody's creative and can come up with their own thing. The great thing is you can still, and the reason why I don't want to bash 9 to 5 folks too hard is, if you're responsible with that money from the 9 to 5, you can take it and buy a business that somebody else already built, like say a laundromat or a car wash, which have like 90 to 95% rate of success, because most of them don't ever go out of business because it's a service that people need.
Sure.
So, um, and get, like, a lot of people will buy a gas station and run a gas station. Those types of businesses, although they're more boring and not as fun to talk about as like AI and so on, sometimes you need a smaller, boring business like that to where you can start generating enough cash flow to get into other more exciting
Sure.
opportunities. But um, but yeah, let's see, I think we're around 2 hours, so I probably better wrap us up. And we'll, or do you have anything else
Oh,
you're
I'm good.
thinking
I
of?
think we've been going a while now.
All right. Well, yeah. Appreciate you coming, and we'll continue this next week.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good day.
Yep. See y'all later.